What if the story you've been living your whole life wasn't actually the truth?
What if it was just a set of old beliefs created years ago that are still running the show today?
I'm Victoria.
And I'm Milt.
And this is Rewrite Your Story, the podcast where we explore how the narratives in your head shape your life
and how you can begin rewriting them with clarity, compassion, and tools you can actually use.
Let's dive in. Welcome back. Oh, I say welcome back, everyone. Hello, Milton. How are you feeling today?
Hello, Victoria. It's been an interesting day because our weather can't decide whether it's whiteout conditions or no snow at all. And this is our real first snowstorm of the winter. Like, I think we've had like one or two others, but we've had so few and far between. So even UDOT clowned the entire state by saying many reports are coming in today. Utah Department of Transportation on their Facebook page. Many people are reporting this crazy white stuff that's falling out of the sky. Just remember, folks, it's snow.
That's hilarious.
It was pretty funny when I read it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, no, it's been crazy up here too. Like last night, the wind was
Yeah.
insane. So we live in like condos, like townhomes, and we're on the top floor. And just hearing it, I have that moment of like, oh my God, our house is going to blow over. It's crazy. And it was a whole thing this morning with the snow, and I'm already sick of it. It's our first, like, real snow this year.
And it's
And I'm sick of
mid-February,
it.
so I think we can handle it. We'll be okay, Victoria.
Yeah.
We'll pull through.
Whatever. Anyways. I feel like we should say this just because I think it's a fun theme that we have. The internet at the office that Milt is in is having issues. So once again, there are technical difficulties, but we are feeling pretty hopeful. So far, it's okay.
Yeah. Our cell service is working, and I hope to not get a major bill for using my hotspot.
Your data.
Yeah.
I love
So
it.
we'll see. Cool. Let's jump into today. How about show and tell?
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, it was a while ago actually, but remember I had told you that I had gotten this package of new, just like
Oh, yeah.
fidgets?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the brand is
This wasn't like a
Neato.
random stalker package again,
No,
was it?
no, I actually ordered this one.
Oh, okay, good.
That would have been great. I would appreciate fidget. See, that's the whole thing. If it was things that I liked or that I could use, I'd be fine with it.
Stalker package would
Anyway,
have been fine.
yes. Anyway, so I got this whole Neato package, and this is one of them. It's just like this little ball, and it's like a stress ball, and it has like these furry
Ah,
textures. If you're not watching the video, I don't know, I'm a bad describer, but just like little hairs all over it. And so it's a very interesting texture. I had my dog smell it when I first got the whole box and he freaked out. The cat really likes it though, which is more concerning because the cat will destroy it. So I have
right.
to hide all of these. But so yeah, that's my show and tell for today.
Nice. I think we talked about this a little bit last week that we're going to do a little bit of a special episode because this is just something that's kind of been, I don't know, I've been thinking about a lot over the last little while. Because I've just run into a lot of people who are like, why is it I keep feeling like I'm going backwards when mindfulness is present and all of these kind of things? And as I'm doing these things, why am I not getting better? And so this is going to kind of expand a little bit on state dependent learning, but it's going to put it more in a developmental states as opposed to like understanding. Well, I guess the way I would phrase it is, and by all means, help me out here if I'm not making any sense.
Yeah.
If you're like me, I'm 48. And sometimes when I get into arguments with like my wife, I'll still feel like I'm 25 sometimes. And not paying attention to that in the past, where I was, when I was 25 and feeling like I'm 15 when I'm arguing with her, which were much worse arguments. That's like there's a reason for that. And so we're going to go through understanding why it feels like we regress because we love to think that time matters. We love to think that every time we circle around the sun one more time, we should be wiser, we should have more knowledge, we should be more effective. And yet our system is wired to function at our most trained state. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
100%. And I really appreciate the phrase that you used that you've heard of people saying, "Why does it feel like I'm regressing when mindfulness is present?" Because I think that's a huge key of just everything, right? Like we're not aware if we're not aware of something, we don't recognize that it's really happening or we don't see the pattern of it. But just like to kind of reiterate what state dependent learning is, because I don't think we've ever talked about it, but it's
We've talked about it in the first
using,
couple episodes.
yeah, we haven't like dived into it though. And it's something that we both really enjoy talking about and are really just familiar with and appreciate for what it is. But just going back to the skills or going back to the behaviors or even emotional states that we feel safest using. I
Yeah.
think a easy example of this, like I struggle with, that my family struggles with, and so like we've had to work on a lot. We don't do great or super well. We're not comfortable with certain emotions. And so when in the past, it's a lot better now, but in the past, when sadness was present or when hurt was present, when we were feeling some type of hurt, instead of expressing the pain from that, we would go straight to anger because that is how we learned to communicate. That's how we learned to deal with any emotions again that we were uncomfortable with. And I still find myself, I'm 27 now, and I still find myself like reverting back to that. Like if I feel uncomfortable or if I feel hurt or just sad or anything like that, like it's a lot easier for me to jump to being annoyed or to being frustrated or to being anything in that kind of like anger bubble rather than dealing with the underlying kind of like emotion of it, if that makes sense.
And that's why I like the little catchphrase that we're going to use for this is the time machine metaphor. So, what you're talking about is that at some point in your life, it became unsafe to express sadness.
Right.
However, the environment said, we'll accept anger. So instead of being in sadness, you jump to anger because that's the state of safety. And so then sadness feels like a dangerous emotion. It gets labeled a dangerous emotion when in reality, it's just an emotion. It's no more dangerous or whatever than anger is. It's just that anger is the one that you know how to operate in. And the problem is you learn that at an early age. And so you jump in your little time machine to go back to your childhood version of anger that we've all lived in because we don't feel like we can express the sadness safely. So another like there's two kind of theorists that we're referencing here. One of them is his name is Lawrence Kohlberg, and he's more controversial. He frames things in much more of a black and white kind of way. But I still like that he shows that the development is levels. And so he's got his like pre-conventional level and his, conventional level and post-conventional level, which is really just childhood, teenage state, and adult state. I like the idea of understanding I learned this stuff in childhood state. I learned this stuff in teenage state, and that's why I can go back to it easily. Another person that we probably talk about more than anyone as far as developmental psychologists go is Abraham Maslow, and he's got his triangle or hierarchy of needs, where you've got the bottom is physiological, then safety, then love and belonging, esteem, and self actualization. And this is something I've used with a lot of my clients over the last, couple weeks. And we really talked about there's the dating phase of life when you're with someone, and then there's the living with them or being married to them or committed to them phase of life. And they don't understand why when I was dating, it felt safe to talk about things, although they're not recognizing that dating is a safe state. Whereas living with people, if you came from an environment that didn't teach you how to have healthy connections or healthy attachments, then you never actually got to love and belonging. You never actually paid attention to how love and belonging feels to live in, because in love and belonging, you can actually be vulnerable with sadness.
Right.
But who wants to say that the people they're with are not safe? That doesn't feel nice.
Yeah.
Like, would you want to go tell your mom, I'm not safe around you, so I'm not going to talk about my sadness. I'm just going to yell.
Right. Well, and even thinking about like no, 100%, like thinking about the fact that that feeling comes down to like a lack of safety or feeling unsafe, like that doesn't that doesn't feel fully true, right? Because no, I do feel safe with my family. I do feel safe with my mom. There are like, and I appreciate the word vulnerability in this conversation because I think that's the biggest thing, and
Yeah.
recognizing the different aspects of vulnerability and how I think fluid that can be, in the sense of like I can be very vulnerable with expressing anger, or I can be very vulnerable with expressing or talking about or sharing certain things versus other things like is unsafe and is not
Mhm.
accepted or whatever it might be.
And so then you're starting to understand that you actually have different states of being with different people, and that's okay. And in fact, you can love someone profoundly and not feel open and honest with them. You know, there are certain like I just remember my grandma and grandpa. I absolutely loved my grandma and grandpa, but I didn't ever really feel safe around them on my dad's side, partly because I didn't know how to relate to them and they didn't know how to relate to me.
Mhm.
And so while I loved them and I felt not accepted by them, which is a whole different thing, in reality, my grandpa and I share more. Him and I relate really well in that way. But because I never felt safe, I couldn't really be myself around them. And so I never exposed all of who I was. And then I didn't get to feeling as connected with them as they could. Whereas other cousins who, were into fly fishing and those kind of things, and they could do those things with my grandpa, he connected with them and had great talks with them. That doesn't mean he didn't share stuff with me, but it wasn't as connected as a relationship as I would have liked. Whereas my mom's parents, we lived down the street from. I worked with my grandpa for many years at a grocery store. He was the bagger, I was the cashier. We did lots of things together. Now, my grandpa didn't have a wide emotional range, so we didn't have many talks, but it was never unsafe to share emotions around my grandpa on my mom's side. And we can recognize that it's okay that we're at different places with different people.
Yeah, 100%. And I think even with that, adding to that too, it's not just the different people, but it's going to be those different situations, right? And
Mhm.
recognizing like certain situations will be activating or triggering and have us kind of go jump into that time machine and revert back
Yeah.
to the stages or the protectors coming out that feels like the best to survive the situation. So it's not just the individual, like the environment, but also like the experience being had as well
Yeah.
in the situation.
Yeah. I agree. All right. So we're going to go into this idea of the ladder. So I know we've talked about that in the SaaS model, this learn, heal, grow, strength, and they're not one is not above the other. However, in this case, we're going to talk about this in the form of like recognizing if we're climbing up and down this ladder in each moment that we're in. And we'll go through some examples of that because in the developmental stages, we're looking at if I'm calling it a childhood and teenage phase, there is an assumption that there is different abilities going on. So let's assume, even though no pillar is better than the other, there is a difference when you're in the grow pillar as opposed to the learn pillar. And the learn pillar has much more foundational kind of work. And so it's more of like returning to a starting or an anchoring point. But that doesn't mean that the strengthen phase is better than the learning phase. We can't get to the strengthen phase or that pillar until we've got really a good foundation in the learn. But I want to make sure we're not over validating which one is better or worse because they're none of them are better than worse. But in this case, I want to use and I like the metaphor of the ladder because we're going to see that we have to sometimes climb down the ladder to get to the learn state again or the grow state again. because we may think a relationship is at a certain point, and then they may do something that brings us back to a stage of like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going through childhood again. People talk about this with trauma recovery all the time. Is, they'll see a color or a smell, or they'll hear a sound, and then that'll bring up the feeling state of what it felt like when they were in their traumatized moment. And you almost have to climb yourself out of that pit, but you have to recognize where you are first. And so there's some value in seeing that ladder and whatnot. So let's jump into um these stages. In Kohlberg's view, we go through these three stages. So and I like this, the survival stage, the belonging stage, and the principle stage, which feels much more less judgmental than say the child, the teen, and the adult. However, I want to be clear, like it's easy to understand why a principled person tends to be more of an adult person, because principles are much more defined values.
Right.
And as a kid, I don't know if you've ever talked to a kid who just kind of does the right thing. If you ask him, "Hey, why'd you do that?" What's the answer you get?
It was the right thing. What do you like?
No,
It's almost like it's just
it's a knee
duh.
jerk.
Like kind of.
As we get older, and maybe this is the problem, is we get more complicated and we define things from, well, it's right because of this, or it's wrong because of this. I don't know. I mean, there's some beauty in the kid just saying, "Well, no, it's just the right thing to do, duh." Like you don't take other people's stuff, or it's not nice to push other people. It's not,
Yeah.
you know,
And then on the flip side of that too, like the kids who do get into trouble or do more bad,
now we're reverting to our childhood phase.
who do engage in more problem behaviors, right? They also have that same response. So why did you take that kid's pencil? Well, I wanted it. Duh. Or why did you push that kid? Well, it pissed me off. So I have a great example of this actually when I was working at the elementary school. I had a first grader that I was working with. I can't remember if I've shared this or not, but he would get violent, like pretty violent. And so one day he had an issue in class. He had punched another kid in the face. And so I'm walking with him. We're going out to recess. I'm talking to him like, dude, like, why did you punch so and so in the face? Like, what was going on? And he said a bad word, but he was like, well, he wouldn't shut the hell up. And I was like, okay, like, no, I understand. But it's just like, no, I want it, I'm gonna do it, or it's bugging me, I'm gonna stop it. Very basic
That's
responses.
actually a really good lead into what the survival state is. Because the survival state is not a thinking state. It's a reaction state. This is the animal inside of us, or we talked about the smoke detector, right? This is the smoke detector. All that's going on in the survival state is that we're feeling like we're in danger. So if we're thinking this from the learn lens, we're looking at, this kid won't shut up. This kid's really bugging me. I now sense smoke. That means there's fire. There's only one way to put out this fire: punch him in the mouth.
So
That's a survival mechanism. Now,
mhm,
I'm not going to tell you that that was right, and I'm definitely not going to tell you that's good. I am going to say that that's makes sense. And
yeah.
that's what we're trying to do in the learn phase. Is we're not trying to judge what happened. Natural consequences happened to this kid, right? Like he got in trouble, he had to go to the office, he may have gotten suspended, I don't know, lots of things. But especially because it's a kid, we'd want to understand why he's learning survival this way. What is it about that's going on in his world that says survival means I have to fight through everything? And so that's where the learning phase comes in. So my response to anger is to fight. That's what this kid is saying. I get this kid because I'm a fighter. For other people, it's flee or run away. So those are the fight and flight response. Then you've got the fawning response, which is to try to appease the person that's the bear. So, if they're a bear, you're hopefully bringing them a zebra and not you. I don't know why it's a zebra.
Honey.
Where are the bears and the zebras living together? I maybe need to look at what planet I'm on.
Zoom
Um,
out. No.
I maybe, but like, what is it like that's going on that I'm living with a bear, and instead of trying to deal with the fact that I'm with a bear, I'm just trying to feed this bear to keep it fat and happy so it doesn't eat me. That would
Mhm.
be the fawning response. And then you've got the freeze response, which is I'm trying to hide in the shadows and hope the bear doesn't see me. All of those are survival mechanisms. And so from the learning phase, I would want to understand why, what is it that led me to believe that this is the spot that I need to handle the dangerous fire? And have I even assessed whether the smoke is fire? Because just because it's smoke doesn't mean there's fire. It means that it could be fire.
I love talking about the F stages, the fight, flight, freeze stages, simply because I think it's also interesting to recognize again how different people in different situations will activate different responses, reactions like in
Right.
us. And it's easy to see things like, so like with you, like saying like you're a fighter, I'm sure that is like the most common that comes up. And then also though, in that learn phase, recognizing the situations that maybe do have you fawning more or maybe do have you freezing more. And what about those situations or people or whatever are different than the ones that have you fighting, right?
Well,
And
here's the part where it gets really irritating is I have worked on my fighter response. So I don't have this like direct fighting response. It's when I go back to the fighting response after I've been quote unquote good for a while, and then I get really irritated with myself. And that's where that judgment comes in. As opposed to, am I able to maintain curiosity in that moment? Am I able to actually say, what is going on with me in that moment that I'm not able to manage things? Like the last couple of vacations we've gone on, I haven't had any arguments while we've been on vacation. However, after the vacation, I've noticed that I wasn't able to hold it in as much. And I got into little dumb arguments. And I could see my little fighter like making the signs, like the guy off camera who's like holding up, this is the thing you should say, and then drops it, and the thing you should say and drops it. Like my little fighter was like, and remember, they did this. They're not going to remember, but you remember because you're a fighter and you hang on to these things. And so, like, that's when you get really judgmental toward yourself, as opposed to recognizing, no, I'm tired, or I'm not feeling as well, or I'm trying to work on 100 different things while I'm at home. And on vacation, I don't have as many things pulling at my attention. So it's a lot easier for me to focus my attention, right? I
yeah.
can put the energy into the strength and in the grow phase, where I'm not going to argue, where I recognize the irritation. I don't have to respond because I don't have anyone else pulling on my attention. But then I get home and I've got employees, I've got the office, I've got clients, I've got, my family who needs me. Like life brings us back to survival state all the time. And that's okay. It didn't mean that I haven't successfully entered the other phases. It means that in that moment, I struggled. And that's where the grace and the healing phase comes in is I can recognize, all right, in this moment, I'm having a hard time. That's why I need to do some grounding exercises again. And the idea that we have to do skills over and over again, like we we don't I don't know why this is so irritating for people, but it is. Like it's we don't get mad that we have to re-eat things. I think we talked about this a lot last week with the whole sports metaphors and all the
Mhm.
training and stuff. Like we don't have a problem going through practice. I don't have a problem sitting in my consultation meeting that I sit in every Friday, where most times we go over DBT skills, probably like 85% now. But in over 15 years, like we go over the same stuff all the time. And I don't get angry about that because I have a purpose for it. But when I have to remind myself to ground myself, it's so easy to label yourself a failure.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's such an interesting thing. So that keeps you out of the heal phase as opposed to, oh, in this moment, I need to reground.
Yeah. I'm thinking, so correct me if I'm wrong, but my brain went to that just idea of perfectionism, right? And I think when it
Mhm.
comes to things that are routine for us, whatever that might be, it's easy to not get hung up on the perfectionism stuff. Yet when we are in, especially when we're in this process of like our healing journey and trying to just become the person that we want to be and like have the life that we want for ourselves, it's so easy to, like you're saying, just like get down on ourselves and judge ourselves. And why am I not making the progress? Why is this not happening? Why can't I remember this? I've been doing this for 6 years. I've been going to therapy and I'm still struggling. Well, yeah, but how long did you develop those skills? How long did it take you to get into seeing help, like seeking help and getting the help that you are wanting? And it's not going to just happen overnight. And I think that's the one of the hardest things is like realizing the healing aspect isn't just a snap of the fingers. Like it
Mhm.
is a very long process and it's a continuous process. And I think we talked about that too, is like constantly wanting to continue to learn, constantly wanting to go through the different pillars and go through the different phases of it rather than just expecting this end product to be delivered to you in overnight, Amazon style, right?
Yeah. Well, it goes into the guiding principles, right? People are doing the best they can in the moment, and all behavior has a cause. Like there's a function to everything that's going on. If your system smells smoke, it responds from fighting a fire, and however you fight the fires.
Yeah.
I don't have to get mad that that's what my system does. That's in fact the job of the system. And I'm very appreciative of that, but I don't always like it when I feel like I'm just going backwards. Unless I recognize, oh, this is what it feels like when my body actually feels angry this way. And then I can ask the question, am I actually angry or is that the outward response?
Right.
And if I can recognize that the outward response is not always the inward thing, for example, like the sadness we were talking about with you and your family, then it helps us understand, oh, we just don't know how to do sadness together. Then it changes the way you're handling it. And then you can start identifying that smoke in a different way. It's no longer smoke. It's now something else. It's not something that's leading to a fire that I have to survive. It's something that I can live through.
Mhm.
Kind of a cool thing.
All right, y'all. We're going to actually pause there for today. I just realized it's a lot of information. It's a lot to kind of throw at you guys and a lot to kind of process and really understand. And so I want to split this up into two different episodes. So if there's anything for you to take away from this episode, it is that if you are feeling like you're regressing, that doesn't mean that you're failing. Usually what this feeling is it's your system just jumping into its most trained survival response and kind of reaction because something felt unsafe. And, the goal overall, it's not to shame that feeling, it's not to shame that experience, it's to notice it, it's to get curious about it, and it's to use that as information, as data to kind of move forward and through the pillars and where you're kind of going on that ladder that Mo was talking about. So, that's where we're going to end for today. But in the next episode, we're going to just keep building on this by talking about the belonging phase, also known as like the law and order phase, which it goes into roles and people pleasing and that kind of trap, as well as just like how expectations, how culture, how relationships, they all can kind of quietly pull you out of your values. So if this is hitting home, if you're really vibing with what we're talking about and it's making sense, share it with somebody who you also know is doing the work and is feeling discouraged by not making progress the way that they think they should, or feeling upset or shame for going back to behaviors that they thought that they were done with or that they no longer want to do. So yeah, that's all for today, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Rewrite Your Story. Take a moment to notice what story showed up for you today.
Remember, you're not your story, you're the one holding the pen.
And each moment is a chance to write a new chapter.
Be sure to join us next time as we keep exploring the path towards self-alignment.
We'll see you then.